In the world of coins, metal becomes memory. Today, we are traveling back to the Philippines, to their 1970s, a time of political change, cultural awakening, and national identity. And at the center of our story is a coin, a simple yet powerful piece of currency, the 10 Piso coin featuring Francisco Balagtas. But this is not just about money. This is about poetry, revolution, language, identity. This is the story of the Philippines' 10 Piso coin and the literary genius, Francisco Balagtas. Before we understand the coin, we must understand the man. Francisco Balagtas, more properly known as Francisco Balagtas, was born in 1788 in Bigar, Bulacan. Today, the town is called Balagtas, renamed in his honor. That alone tells you how deeply he is respected. He lived during the Spanish colonial era, a time when the Philippines was under Spanish rule, and Filipino identity struggled under foreign dominance. But Balagtas had something powerful. He had words, and words can be stronger than weapons. His most famous literary masterpiece was Florante at Laura, a poetic epic written in the Tagalog language. At a time when Spanish was the language of power and prestige, Balagtas wrote in the language of the people. That act alone was revolutionary. Through allegory and metaphor, he criticized injustice, corruption, and oppression. Though set in a fictional Albania, the story reflected the suffering of Filipinos under colonial rule. He was imprisoned during his life, some say due to political issues, others say because of rivalry in love. But even behind bars, he continued writing. Balagtas died in 1862, long before the Philippines gained independence. But his poetry became part of the nation's cultural foundation. And more than a century later, his face would be placed on a coin, a powerful symbol that literature shapes nations. Now let us step into the 1970s. The Philippines in 1970 was a country on the edge of transformation. Under President Ferdinand Marcos, the nation was experiencing political tension, economic shifts, and rising nationalism. Just 2 years later, in 1972, martial law would be declared. It was a decade of control, reform, and controversial leadership. During this time, the Bangko Sentral in Pilipinas began modernizing the country's coinage. The goal was to reflect Filipino heroes, intellectuals, and national pride on everyday currency. Coins were not just for transactions. They were statements. And so the 10 Piso coin was introduced, featuring Francisco Balagtas. The coin itself was modest in size, yet powerful in symbolism. On the obverse side, we see the profile of Francisco Balagtas. His expression is calm, intellectual, reflective. His name is inscribed clearly, honoring his contribution to Filipino literature. The reverse side features the official seal of the Central Bank of the Philippines, a symbol of authority and national stability. The metal composition reflected the economic realities of the era. During the 1970s, global metal prices were fluctuating. Many countries adjusted coin materials to manage production costs. The Philippines was no different. Coins were often made from copper-nickel alloys, durable enough for circulation but affordable for mass minting. This was a circulating coin, not a commemorative one locked away for collectors. It passed through markets, jeepney drivers' hands, sari-sari stores, and schoolchildren's pockets. It became part of everyday Filipino life. Imagine that. A national poet traveling from hand to hand. But why Balagtas? Why a poet, instead of a general, president, or revolutionary? Because nations are not built only by soldiers. They are built by thinkers, by writers, by cultural guardians. Balagtas represented the Filipino language, Tagalog, which would later evolve into Filipino, the national language. At a time when identity was politically sensitive, honoring Balagtas sent a quiet but powerful message. The Filipino language matters. Filipino literature matters. Filipino identity matters. In many ways, placing Balagtas on the coin during the Marcos era reflected the government's push toward nationalism, promoting cultural pride while maintaining political authority. Coins became silent messengers of ideology. Now let's talk about design details. The portrait style on the coin reflects 1970s engraving techniques, realistic yet slightly stylized. The hair detail, the clothing lines, The profile depth, all carefully sculpted to survive mass production. The lettering was clear and bold. Coins of this era were designed not only for beauty but also for durability. Edge details were simple, no excessive decoration. Functionality over luxury. Yet, when you hold it, you feel history. The weight, the metallic sound, the texture worn down by decades of circulation. Some coins show heavy wear, others remain in near mint condition. And for collectors, condition is everything. Today, the 1970 10 Piso Francisco Balagtas coin has become a nostalgic artifact. Its value in monetary terms may not be extremely high compared to rare silver or gold issues, but its historical value? Immeasurable. Collectors in the Philippines often search for early issues in excellent condition. Proof versions, if available, command higher prices. Auction platforms occasionally feature well-preserved examples. Depending on condition, value can vary significantly. But beyond money, the coin represents an era. It represents 1970, just before martial law, just before political change reshaped the country. When you hold that coin, you are holding a pre-martial law Philippines, a Philippines balancing tradition and modernity. Let us also understand something deeper. Coins are time capsules. The 1970 Balagtas 10 Piso coin sits within a broader tradition of Filipino numismatics. Earlier Philippine coins under Spanish rule bore the image of Spanish monarchs. Under American rule, coins featured figures like Manuel L. Quezon and symbols of progress. After independence, the Philippines increasingly placed Filipino heroes on currency, reclaiming national narrative. Balagtas was part of that reclaiming. His presence on the coin declared, "We honor our own." There is poetic irony here. Balagtas once wrote about injustice and suffering under colonial power. And now, his image was minted by a modern government navigating its own controversies. History is layered, sometimes complicated, but always fascinating. For collectors, several factors affect the coin's value. A mint year, a condition, circulated versus uncirculated, a rarity of specific mint batches, a historical demand, a cultural significance. Coins with sharp details and minimal scratches are highly desirable. Graded coins certified by professional agencies can fetch higher auction prices. However, even a worn coin holds sentimental value, especially for Filipinos who remember using it in daily life. Some remember buying snacks after school. Others remember paying jeepney fare. Coins connect memory to metal. Now imagine a classroom in the 1970s. A teacher holds up the 10 Piso coin and points to the face of Balagtas. She explains Florante at Laura. She recites verses. Students look at the coin differently. It becomes more than money. It becomes a story. That is the power of design. In modern times, Philippine coin designs have evolved. The Banco Central in Pilipinas introduced new series with updated security features and designs. But older coins like the 1970 Balagtas issue remain beloved among collectors. They represent authenticity, simplicity, and heritage. There is also an emotional dimension. For overseas Filipino workers who left the country decades ago, seeing this coin can trigger nostalgia. It reminds them of childhood, of markets, of Filipino poetry taught in school. Balagtas becomes a bridge between generations. If you are a coin collector, especially someone building historical narratives on your YouTube channel, this coin offers rich storytelling material. It connects literature to currency, politics to metal, art to economy. And that is rare. Let's reflect for a moment. A man born in 1788, writing poetry under colonial oppression, dying before seeing independence. Yet, in 1970, his face circulates in millions of copies across a free Philippines. That is legacy. That is immortality. As we close this story, remember, coins are not just economic tools. They are cultural documents. The 1970 Philippines 10 Piso coin featuring Francisco Balagtas stands as a tribute to language, resilience, and national pride. It reminds us that literature shapes identity, and identity shapes nations. So next time you hold an old coin, ask yourself, whose story does this metal carry? Because sometimes, the smallest objects hold the greatest histories. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the history of the Philippines, 10 Piso Francisco Balagtas coin. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Let me know in the comments. Do you own this coin? And what story does it tell you? Until next time, keep collecting, keep discovering, and keep history alive.